Well, hello folks. I'm here in my deluxe studio. And today I want to go over a book with you. And I want to be a bit more thorough than I probably am going to be, because that's just my nature. And I really like to go over things and go over them and go over them. So if that ends up happening, please bear with me, if you want. If you don't, well, that's just fine too. But, obviously it's just for educational purposes, and hopefully I'll give this guy a little bit of business here, because it really is a good piece of work he got. And, I might end up coughing or something like that, because I've had an issue with my throat the last few weeks. Well, really the last week, but I knew I was fighting something, and it kind of popped his head up. And some people out there think that you should never get sick and things like that, but it's just part of life, you know. If you never get sick, it means your body can't ever fight off things, because you're always going to have things trying to afflict your body and take over your metabolism, have a life of their own. So I don't think anything that you do, that you can do, is going to make you into a Superman, and that includes stuff. But the first thing I'd like to say about this guy is he has a great YouTube channel, Elastic Strength. Now, it is a diet book, so he's pretty much going over the data. At first, he's explaining why he was wrong about previous diets he's done, because he was like a Garden of Eden type guy, like plant-based for like 25 years or something like that. I mean, vegetarian, this and that. I mean, he tells his story or whatever. But he comes across some very good points, like when you're going over this diet data, nutrition data specifically. He's saying how there's this doctor, a scientist rather, Ralph Carpinelli. I guess he's Italian, but with first name Ralph. Maybe he lived in America or something. I'm not sure. But numerological abracadabra is what it comes down to. Because every study that isn't like confirmed by a bunch of other studies, it's not grounded in anything. It lacks independent confirmation, and independent. I'm not talking about singular. I'm talking about confirmation by independent teams in various places. So it boils down to just somebody's opinion, and he also looks at things kind of mathematically. And what you find is that, like this study stains something, this study stains something against it. And if you take the totality of everything going on, you come up with that, like, if any of it's true, like 80% of it has to be false or whatever, because it's contradicting so much that if there's any truth in there whatsoever, I'm not like a crazy mathematician. I don't know his exact methods, but it's just... it's also just common sense, you hear this, you hear that. What's that mean? It means a lot of things you hear aren't right. But that guy really kind of dug into that, and I'd love to, further in time, dig into that myself and see what he was talking about more specifically. So he's pretty much setting up this basis where you have to listen to yourself, and you have to listen to nature. And there's a common mistake going on all the time in these nutritional studies where they're talking about the absolute risk and the relative risk, but they always show you the relative. So there may be an absolute risk increase of like 0.19, but the relative between these two groups is whatever. It's like astronomical. It's 50% or something statistically significant, Usually with correlations, you're looking for over 20% is what you call significant. So he's saying that, like, if you look at things absolutely, all these studies, the findings, the data that they crunch, it's not statistically significant. It's percentages, few percents. And that can simply be noise in an experiment. It can be bias and everything else. So just on the very basics of sound methodology, he's saying that you can't trust a lot of these studies. However, of course, some you can, because they have a better grounding, they have better methodology, and they can be checked out or whatever. I mean, confirmed in different cases, is what I mean. Alright. Yeah, I'm just flipping through here so I can remind myself. Yeah, but he comes with this very natural perspective throughout this book, where it's just like, you are part of nature, you're an animal, and blood tests and all these things can be useful, especially if you're very ill, but you have this perspective where you don't need the doctor or whatever. Like very briefly, he's saying no healthy non-human animal needs a dietitian, physician, blood test, science, or ideology to know what to eat. Every creature simply follows nature, and most importantly, no creature follows a balanced diet. Which is true. No lion thinks that he needs to go eat some watermelon just to be balanced. No orangutan thinks it needs to eat 5 animals every day. It doesn't happen. Sometimes they try to, and they don't digest it, just like we don't digest corn or plants. So it's not necessarily what people do that's the example. It's what they specialize to do. All right. Yeah, and he's just talking about the senses and how, we have a reaction to bitter taste and things like this. And, nothing in the animal tastes that bad. I mean, some things are a bit funny on the texture, we're not used to them. But the only thing that really tastes bad is bile or certain gunk in the intestine. And then he goes up and he starts coming across some really interesting perspectives, too, pitting the diseases of society into question. Talking about, this isn't his words exactly, but some people used to call schizophrenia bread man's disease, because, a torture back then, a punishment would be bread and water. If you want to throw somebody in jail, you give them bread and water. It's probably make them go crazy. And now he's just saying, all these rates of psychiatric disorders and neurosis and things are increasing as animal production is decreasing. And he goes on, he's really in depth, you know what I mean? Just check out this page. I mean, camera work. You see all these sources? He doesn't really mess around that much. I mean, it's just this is a book you can keep around and you read through it, but you can go back and really dig into a certain topic you want to. You could look at these certain sources and just go from there. You know what I mean? So it's a great book to have around. Yeah, he's talking about suicide rates and all this good stuff. And then also he goes into some political things. I mean, he's not talking about parties and abortion and things like that. I mean, what he does talk about though is when you have a globalized food system, you're introducing foreign species. Those bugs in the fruit boxes and seeds and all this other stuff. And it really is an issue. In a lot of environments. Something gets where it's not supposed to, it has a great effect, and it starts killing everything else, whether it's a plant or an insect or a fish with fangs. And then he does talk about some philosophy and some spirituality throughout the book, which makes it is a compelling read. That's why it's interesting about this book. He cites the sources and everything, but he's grounded in his own perspective. And he kind of uses that to push forward the book. So it kind of reads nicely, but at the same time it's very thorough. And you'll be going back to it. Because he has little quotes from different spiritual teachers. And how to order your house, to order your family, or order your mind rather, and your heart, and then your family, and then your community, and then your nation. Tiger, mosquito, fire ants. Do you ever know it? Of course, those things are so evil. They can't be natural. Lewis and Clark. So they put some history in there too. Goes over some of like what tribes used to do, Inuits, that type of thing. So if you're interested in that type of diet, is interesting. Percentage of tooth decay on original versus modern diet. And it's like striking how much more it is. So he's going over some like Western price data, if you're aware of that type of thing. Okay, then he gets into language and things like that too, which is, I think, is very fascinating. Going into some meanings of the words and how that applies to like how we think about meat and things like that. That's what I'm saying. This guy is like very intelligent, because he's not just zoned in like an autistic dude. He's covering the field pretty well. Senses, breathing, gut health, libido. So, like I said, it's pretty comprehensive. Then he goes into like differences between apes and humans, and like I just say really quickly, the main difference is like apes are specialized. They eat plants. They do hindgut fermentation. They ferment fiber, and then they absorb short-chain fatty acids from the microbial action, and that's how they get their fat to digest. And we can't do that, so we have to just get the fat directly if we're gonna have that amounts of fat. And then he goes into like some vegans and people want to say like our teeth aren't like sharp or whatever compared to like carnivores, but actually he gets into details, and it's like you can kind of have like the same shape a little bit, but it's gonna be like different ridges, and that will give you like a shearing advantage. And also like the thickness of the enamel is different between carnivores and not carnivores. So yeah, I mean that's just another argument for carnivory, but he really goes into it. And the book pretty much says you can do, and it's just rule of thumb when you're going over people's work, you can do quick brief things for like education or like spotting or marketing or something for the dude or whatever it is, but I don't feel like I should be spending hours just going over all his work. And then he does really break things down pretty well. Like when he talks about, like, you hear people on YouTube sometimes, have you heard the expensive tissue hypothesis, and they start talking about brain size per body size? Well, he does that, but he even does it, like, breaks it down into like the subspecies of different types of monkeys, and like looking at those ones and seeing if those traits correspond and are accurate within the species. And also, of course, he does it with the different animals and the different species between them. So I'm just saying he does like this thorough thing, and you do find the same trends within monkeys. The more carnivorous ones have more brain metabolism. They have a shorter gut overall, or definitely a shorter long gut. So that's very interesting. And then he goes to stomach acid. I don't know if people have looked at this thing. I'm just going to read over this. The pHs. Colobus monkey, 6.3 pH, stomach acid. Sheep, 4.7. Dog, 4.5. I think cow is like 5.4 or 6. Ox, 4.2. He has a bunch of other ones. Cat, 3.6. Carnivore. Remember, these things are they're logarithmic. So like the difference between 1.5 and 2 can be like 30 or 40 times or something, or whatever it is. And so like on a little graph, something like okay, snowy owl, 2.5. Bottlenose dolphin, they have very big brains. Second or third largest per body size. Humans are the largest. They have 2.3 stomach acid. A rabbit, even though it's a plantivore or hindgut fermenter, it also eats feces and things like that quite a lot. So 1.9, maybe it has something to do with it. Falcon, 1.8. Different types of falcons, hawks. Then we have the human, 1.5, and you will see up to 3 on that level, but I really think that's like someone who's eating a lot of plants or things like that. I'm not sure about the disparity with that. And then there's only 3 other animals that are more acidic. They all say 1.5, but they're listed as more acidic. I don't know if that's simply because they are and it's not listed a slight difference, or if it's just how the list was made. But the ferret, wandering albatross, and the possum are as acidic as us. So you could say not every human, but like I feel like a well-functioning human, and whatever, it's not a strain for us to have that strong stomach acid. It requires a lot of metabolic energy, which is kind of goes hand in hand with it. You know, you eat a lot of fat or whatever, you have energy for the bile production and the maintenance of the acid, which isn't always that strong, which is another thing. Sometimes it weakens a bit, you know, when you're not having food in there. And there's so many other little things in here that like you may sort of wonder about, but you never have good data on or whatever, or you just don't come across much. It's like maybe you've eaten liver and you get like a little bit of the grit or something, like the connective tissue of the liver, and it's kind of funny. And you're wondering like, oh, should I eat this? It feels kind of weird in my mouth, but maybe you eat it anyway, maybe you don't. I was saying right here, there's a pancreatic enzyme called elactase, specifically digesting elastin, which is a component found in connective tissue of organs. So like we specifically have this enzyme to digest the connective tissue, which is specifically found in organs like liver or brain or whatever. You know, so it kind of like, well, why do we have that, but we don't have an enzyme for fiber? So there's lots of things to be thinking about. And then he just goes on about that. He goes on about how we enjoy fat. Oh, and this is really interesting too. He looks at the 2011. Oh, comparing data about meat consumption in 2011 to longest lived nations in 2015. I guess you couldn't find them for the same year. I don't know. But, yeah, it's like the top nations. Almost all of them have like a high total amount of meat consumption. And this is an interesting thing too. Hong Kong now. This is a nation, but I guess it's a city so big, might as well be one. They have the highest meat consumption in the world, and now their longevity has caught up too. They're one of the longest lived. Here they're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9 or 10th. But I guess now they're like first or second. So that's really interesting. You know, but just so much information in this book. You know what I mean? Like, I've just been barely skimming over it, and we're probably only like a third of the way through here. He talks about vitamin D deficiency in your climate too, which is another thing. Like, this guy's not afraid to talk about things that like some people are. You know, he's like talking about how Africans and Asians have vitamin D deficiencies when they're in northern latitudes, and they're more stressed and things like that, which is just true. And same thing with a lot of Europeans. Some Europeans can handle the South, but some go down there and it's just like they get sick or whatever, you know, or they get burnt to a crisp or these types of things. So, but he also goes into that. Going into like the total injury metabolism based on these different like muscle masses of the different races and different vitamin D levels and skeletal structures and things like that. So it's like I love that he's not afraid to address some issues. And he's not saying anything about it. Like, he's not saying anything judgmental or whatever. He's just saying that like these are medical differences between people, a lot of people say they don't exist, but they do. So it's interesting to keep that stuff in mind. It helps us understand the diversity of life a bit better. Okay, he's talking about fiber. It's neat how he does. He has a topic, but then he like branches off like the chapter into little segments where he just goes on about one little part of it. Excuse me. So he's talking about oxalates now, and he gets into all that, lectins and all that, and it kind of really helped me identify more. Because when you hear the stuff on YouTube or whatever, they're just like so brief, but when you actually just read a few pages about it, it kind of sticks into your brain a bit better. And they stop being words, and you start kind of understanding a bit more. He talks about cancer drugs. Oh, this is very interesting. Yeah, here's a little excerpt I'll share with you, talking about natural antioxidants and whether or not like herbal cures for cancer are safe. And he says this is why some of these natural antioxidants are pesticides. He's talking about the chemicals in food naturally occurring, which he does a great case of explaining that in a fruit or an apple, there's like 10,000 times more pesticide in it naturally produced than anything we ever spray on. Alright? This is why some of these natural antioxidants or pesticides have been shown to have anti-tumor cell properties. Similarly, just like man-made chemotherapy, these chemicals interfere with cell metabolism, slowing the growth and repair systems of tumor cells. It is well known that synthetic chemotherapy for cancer is just as toxic to human cells as to tumor cells. We have no reason to believe that natural anti-cancer drugs taken from plants are any different. Pretty sound reasoning to me. You know, if something's going to be killing this, it's probably going to be killing that. That's how a lot of medicine works, which is why I don't even know. People are always talking about the phrase, food is medicine, food is medicine. Maybe that he should just said, like, I don't know what he should have said, but, you know, I would say there is no thing as medicine. There's controlled harm, and then there's good, nurturing diet. Yeah, and just goes on, like, so there's certain specific actions which harm both tumor cells and normal cells, DNA replication, inhibitors, and things like this. Yeah, and he also does, like, interspersed little, like, information charts with, like, more specifics. So yeah, it is kind of like a black and white book, but the depth of it is his mind and the way he addresses issues and the quality of the data. Another thing is, like, I usually get pissed off about this people's writings, and I'm always like, blah, 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 blah. But this guy doesn't bug me that much, and so I think he does a pretty good job. I mean, there's some areas where I'm like, oh, this isn't written so well. Like, you're kind of being a bit sneaky about your point here, but like compared to most authors, I think he's pretty transparent and honest. So it really makes it kind of like a comfortable setting for reading it. You feel like you can trust the guy, but really, you know, he goes over this too. It's like, it's what you think, it's your research, it's your experience with life and eating that matters the most. And he talks about, like, domesticated wolves, because some people are like, let's see here. Yeah, his points are kind of complex for science. They don't always lend themselves to quick snippets. And to be honest, when I was looking at this, I'm trying to get my mind back into what he was saying. But yeah, he goes over some interesting things too about, like, wild wolves eat a lot more meat than domesticated dogs, like, when left to it. And he's thinking this is because, like, people have been with dogs for long enough, they've, like, fed them some carbohydrates, so they've kind of, like, gotten used to it, you know, or had some adaptation. You know, I don't know what it was exactly. Now this is something that's tremendously interesting to me anyway. Which I just never came across, never knew. He's saying how not only like does our body work really well on ketones, he's saying that like whether you're ketogenic or not, a large portion of your body is running on fat anyway. Your heart, of course, most people know, is always beating from saturated fat stores. That's why every heart in the animal is encased in a big sack of fat, and it's usually hard fat, saturated fat, dense fat. So you let me read this here, short excerpt. And people eating normal mixed diets containing more than 150 grams of carbohydrate daily, fats provide at least 60% of ongoing energy needs. So he's not saying you're getting that much from your diet, but he's saying that's what's going on in your body. Moreover, this increases to at least 70% when people engage in low to moderate intensity aerobic activity. That's right, during aerobic activity, nature increases the dominance of fat in the fuel mix, contrary to claims that carbohydrate is preferred in endurance activity. You know, like people say carb load, but he's saying, no, like your body actually makes you burn more fat. And this is just amazing right here. Resting skeletal muscle obtains 85% of its energy needs from fat. So when you're just like chilling out, your body's burning fat. Of course, it talks about the heart, which runs on fat. The liver runs on amino acids, which come from protein. You know, so like the only two things that really need sugar in your body is your brain and your red blood cells. So that's the basis of this. So I mean, I just found that stunning, absolutely stunning. Yeah, and then it goes on about like the fuel reserves of the body, which is amazing. Like a 70-kilogram man with 15% body fat has 95 calories of extra energy and fat. It's pretty handy. Okay, then he goes, not only is he talking about like these foods and how the body works, but then he goes into like the specifics, like the percentage of types of fats and that. Saturated versus monounsaturated versus polyunsaturated. And it's not like he just talks about the things abstractly. He also then talks about like parts of your body which are affected by these fat ratios, like your brain, and like the ratios of fat in your brain. So it's very interesting. And then he's comparing like animal fats, which all pretty much resemble the human fat. And then he's excuse me. And then he's talking about the vegetables, and they're just like all over the place, crazy amounts of polyunsaturated fat. Wasn't that good? Well, the stuff goes rancid and everything else. But yeah, also he just makes a lot of good points to put things into context. Like he says creatures inhabiting cold climates are having low body temperatures, like organisms in the northern plains, reptiles, ocean fish. They have more unsaturated fats, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, because they are sufficiently fluid at low temperatures. He's talking about the viscosity of the fat varying by temperature. And it says, if an Alaskan salmon contained more saturated fat, it would freeze solid in Pacific waters. Saturated fats would be immovable in a flax plant on the Canadian plains. So it's saying like different bioregions have generally different levels of saturated versus unsaturated fat, and that like the temperature of your body then should help you decide the temperature of the fats you're eating. Alright, so in contrast, at tropical temperatures, he says this includes the human core body temperature, unsaturated fats alone are too fluid for making fat pads, storage deposits, and strong cell membranes. So he's just saying that, yeah, like, if you have oil that's way too fat and you're trying to build body tissue on it, it'd be like, seriously, it'd just be all over the place. You know what I'm talking about? You'd be like a sloppy, I don't know, what came to my mind, I shouldn't say, okay, but, yeah, you wouldn't be able to hold yourself together. You'd sit on your butt and you wouldn't have any cushion. You'd be straight to your hips, you know, like, it's just funny the way you have to, like, think about things in, like, a profound way to get to such silly conclusions that just make straight up sense, you know. And then he goes into the chemistry of talking about, like, the different carbon atoms, the long chains and the shorter chains, and all this stuff. So it's like taking a more profound look at simple things that we come across in our daily lives, which is why I like the book a lot. Okay, so it goes on about the omega-3, omega-6. There's a lot of omega-6 when you're on a sort of carbohydrate diet or eating plant fats. Then he talks about, like, dairy a lot. Now, he applies certain standards to other categories in his book, which he doesn't apply to dairy in some way. And, for example, he talks about, like, hormones and meat. And he breaks it down extremely well. And pretty much it boils down to your liver stores 90% of the hormones in your body, ingested, I mean, that come outside. So, all these estrogens and meat and testosterone or whatever, your body just annihilates them. And then it kind of uses what it needs to, and it keeps a very tight control on it. And then the amounts that you ingest, they never come near to the amounts that your own body produces. So when you're talking about a boy who's like getting too many estrogens from drinking milk or something, it's not true, because that boy would have to drink, he breaks it down, the boy would have to drink like the 1,300 liters of milk a day to get that much estrogen, because he produces so much himself, and the amount that you absorb from your diet is so little, which just makes sense. If you're eating a bunch of different organisms, you don't know exactly what you're eating every day. If you were going to be that affected by it, you'd just be all over the place with your hormones in your body. Your whole body is run by hormones. Your digestion, every single process involves hormones and protein signal. So you can't have these things being fluctuating, being all over the place. You need consistency. So you need to get the building blocks. You need some help from your diet. But to say that your diet's going to influence that through this direct method is not true. However, he does look at the carbohydrate contribution to hormone levels and how that can get you off balance real quick, and certain chemicals in plants which then affect your hormones. So, you know, he's not just saying, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He never just says, oh, blah, blah, blah about anything. He says, this is what this is, this is how it works, but it's nuanced. Everything is nuanced, because you're talking about, you know, a very complex, wonderful creation, the human body. So, you gotta respect the thoroughness of this guy's mind and his presentation, so you'll learn a whole lot about that. But, you know, when he's doing his thing, to get to my point about the milk, and contrasting his slight bias towards it, with his treatment of the steroids, is that he says there's no strict evidence to say that, you know, milk makes, or estrogens make females have puberty faster. He says, blah, 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 and he looks at the stats and stuff and makes this conclusion, makes a good case, and now I'm convinced about that. So if you're not, maybe it'd be good to check out what he's saying. Check yourself. But then it's the same thing with the milk too. Like there's not a whole lot of great evidence to say that it's harmful, that contributes to cancer. He skills over the epidemiological studies, and they're not that great. Like, again, the significance is like absolute risk is like between 1 and 3%, which isn't a good correlation. You're looking for 0.2, 20% at least. That's a weak correlation, you know. Like, it doesn't matter if you're doing psychology or if you're doing like chemical research or whatever, you know. It's just like you need some type of better threshold than 2%, 3%. But that's not the same as saying that there is no. He's saying there's no evidence of harm according to cancer, but as far as the intestine, there is some issues that people have with milk. So it's kind of like a little bit of a blind spot. Like, I think we need more research on the intestine and milk, the integrity of the intestine and milk. But that's just kind of my view right now, you know what I mean? So, whatever, I'm just saying. Then he goes, there are a lot of minerals, different places to find the minerals, like K2, everyone loves about their K2. But hard cheeses, soft cheeses, this is kind of generic list. Those are good. Those are near the top. Egg yolk is near the top. But it's twice as good in the Netherlands than it is in the United States. Well, go figure. I know all about that. That's why Europeans come to America, and after 3 generations, they're looking a lot less beautiful and sound. It's because the food here isn't as good for the most part. I'm not saying it can't be, but for the most part. Chicken liver is a different source. But the thing that's all above these, like dramatically above these, like, let's see here, how many times is that? 54. Over 4 times greater than the leading source, the second one down from it, is goose liver pate. Like, if you think you need some K2, get yourself some goose liver. I was so surprised by that. It's really interesting. It makes me think when I see those geese coming down from Canada. Man, I need to snag me one next time. Get enough K2 for the year. Freeze it up and make a little teeny pills or something. Man, it's just one goose. No one's gonna notice if I snag one on the parking lot, right? Officers, we have a man who just stole a goose. Who did you steal it from? You can't steal a goose. It doesn't belong to anyone. Anyway, you know, one day, I don't know, because we're getting close to the end here. Be still with me. One day, I was in the parking lot eating myself a raw steak, and I seen how much I could eat because I don't do this anymore. But I was like, this is when I started trying out. I'm like, this is really bad. If I overdo it, I'm gonna feel bad. So I ate like 2.3 pounds of raw ribeye, but there was a little bit I left because my steak was 2.33 or 3.4. So I had a few little bits. So maybe I only ate 2.25 or something. But I just started giving these geese hunks of my steak, and they ate it right up. This is good eating. Hey, this isn't quite like fish, but it's okay. Or algae, or whatever they're eating. Grasses. I was talking about calcium. He has some little recipes and stuff. Eggshell powder. I was always skeptical about that, but now I think I'm going to try some. You boil some eggs and then grind them all up. Not the eggs, the eggshells, and then you grind them up and dehydrate them. Dehydrate them and then grind them up. Just talking about different nutrients. So this is very neat. Then you start talking about like the ratios of diets, like fat to protein and all that, and ketones. He's kind of thinking ketones are less important than like an abstinence of phytochemicals from plants and things like that. And, you know, he's not as strict as I am. Like in his own life, he is. You know, he only eats like 90. He only eats like 1 to 3% vegetables or fruits. You know, I don't eat any, but he says some people can eat up to 30% and do okay, which I suppose they can. And then he just goes over some like, kind of like, I want to say meal ideas, but it's not like really like a cookbook. It's just kind of like, he goes over like what he eats, sort of. He goes over cooked versus raw, which is interesting. Yeah, that's another point I'll just address real quick. It's like, your body, he says your body denatures everything. You know, everything's gonna be, it has to be denatured, which means like the amino acids and like the proteins and stuff, they just uncoil and relax. And kind of, you know, the spirit of the flesh floats up to the heavens, and then you can pull it into yourself, you know, and it's all good. The karma's dissolved. He doesn't say that, okay? I'm just poking a little fun. But, you know, you denature it when you cook it, or your stomach acid just and denatures it. you know. So he's kind of like somewhere in between. You cook a little bit, but you leave it medium rare or whatever. Sometimes you eat raw. He's like not against it, you know. He makes it very clear. It's like, if you want to eat 100% raw, just do it, you know. But don't think you need to or something. He has a little bit of an evolutionary stance, which I'm just kind of like, there's so many problems with evolution from where I'm coming from. You know, with this video ain't about that. So that kind of irritates me. It might irritate you if you're of that ilk. But whatever, he's not crazy about anything, as far as I know. I'm mad with that he is, because he's just like, seems like a pretty calm meathead. Yeah, he's talking about potassiums and everything he does, and then he has like these nice little charts about again, just like different sources of potassium and whatever. And he gets symptoms, like if he talks about problems, like, oh, what's the symptoms of this problem? That's interesting. He's talking about why we might like to eat fish or something like that. And he's saying we have an instinctual ability to swim, which is true. Like, if you have a father, sometimes if they're teaching their kid to swim, and this was the case how I learned, is that they'll like do something like, oh, jump and I'll catch you, and they catch him, and then they just don't catch him, and then the kid freaks out. And they just swim, and then they're not scared of water. You know what I mean? It's like it's inborn, and it's like true. We just kind of know how to swim. We don't have a whole lot of body hair like all over. You know what I mean? And he's saying like that might have to do something with us being liking a little bit of fish and things like that, or seafood, mussels, or whatever. So it's just interesting. The thing he comes up with, like he doesn't really just have opinions. He just like maybe suggests something, but then he just goes into it. So it's neat. I respect that. And that's true. We do have a love of water, like, you know, a hot tub, swimming and stuff. These are things we find enjoyable. There's got to be some type of reason for that, you know. Or like I remember being a kid, like it was so fun to just like throw a bunch of stuff in the pool and then like try to like snag it, and like, you know, it was like a game to dive under and like see if you could find. Like, why is that fun? Probably because some part of us wants to go down there and like get, you know, little things to eat. Now, I'm not crazy about seafood. I don't think it's entirely important. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. I don't think. That's my opinion, but you know, I still like to eat seafood sometimes. You know what I mean? Oh, he also talks about, like, again, like, he's not going on about parties and stuff, but he's not afraid to talk about the political, or try to be politically correct and things like this. He's like going on about fertility rates and like meat consumption, and oddly enough, like, you are more fertile, like you can have more kids, and you have greater potency of sperm and greater health of egg when you're on a primal diet. But your fertility rate actually decreases, like actual kids you have per woman. The more meat you consume, and it's like excuse me, it's like on a national level too. So he's talking about like how like Africa and all these places, like the reason why they're having a population boom and the reason why all this stuff's going on is because they're relying on agricultural systems. So he doesn't say this is me talking. It's like, well, we're giving them a lot of money, and that's not responsible on our part. We think we're doing something good, and then they get all this money to have population boom, and they starve and have big swollen bellies and everything. It's like, what good are you really doing, person? You know, like, where's your actual heart? You know, you have a heart, but you don't have a mind. It's no good. You know, so that's my stance. He's not going at that, but he just goes into like fertility rates based on consumption of dietary things, and how, like, if we eat a lot of meat, you know, that's saying that we're not gonna help this overpopulation of a different nation and all the problems that leads to, environmental and everything else. And it's true, like, if we do start to eat more and more meat, you can't feed a large population on just a meat diet. So it puts a population cap. It limits the amount of food energy that you can have within an environment, because this is his argument. I would like to see more data on this, but pretty much just saying, like, you can get more actual food energy from agriculture, but which will lead to more production, but then you'll have higher rates of incidence of diseases and things like that. So this is a little extra. It really shows the Western strain running in this guy, because there's an Englishman in the late 1800s who said the same thing. Of course, people don't listen now. Same problems going on. Maybe we'll start to listen to the voice of reason that's usually ignored throughout the ages. The alternative is to continue vainly increasing food production, focusing on caloric quantity instead of quality, like nutrient density. This will generate an even larger population with a higher proportion of malnourished and malformed people. Many of those people will die off from diseases resulting from poverty and pollution. So this again, you know, it's kind of like we have this idea in our Western, I don't want to say our soul right now, but our mentality is that we can't bring in people to the world because it's such a terrible place and there's all these other problems going on, people are starving and whatnot. But the thing is, if we actually just like stand our ground and eat more and this and that, more of our resources will over here, less of them will go to different places. Like, that'll keep the economy boosted more for this nation. And that nation won't be so burdened by a population that doesn't have the infrastructure to support. And, you know, it's like, people may get offended by talking like that, but it's just sound reasoning. So I hope you're not one of those people. And that's pretty much it. You know, he's talking about ruminants rejuvenating the lands, reversing desertification. And that's true. It's not some crazy myth, you know. You can just... I bet if you talk to some farmers where the land's not so great, and you can find ones that they've gone there, they bought land, and then they've made it good. They made the pasture better by grazing animals on it. Polyphase Farms in Tennessee, that place was terrible land. It wasn't good for much of anything. Started running cows on it, they developed it. And that's what brought the life back, so now it's like a green, lush pasture. You know, like beautiful grass, and very diversified. Oh, this is another thing. You hear about the water argument for agriculture versus meat consumption. This is one I made myself. I did some homework back when I was a vegetarian about how all this water usage is reduced if you're a vegetarian. But I didn't look at things like the amount of fuel required to get those nutrients, if you want to call them that, those foods, if you're going to call them that. And as far as processing energy and as far as harvesting energy, is way more efficient than you know, raising the cattle and doing the animal husbandry and things like that compared to agriculture. You know, you don't only have to harvest with the machines and all this stuff, but then you have to like soak and boil. You have to skin sometimes, or you have to process in some way and dehydrate and all this other stuff. And it's like, even when you do that in the meat industry, it's not as energy intensive. You know, it's like, do you ever worry that much about running a dehydrator to make beef jerky? I mean, that's a bit of a silly example, but excuse me. Oh, and also distribution. You can't get rid of that. Like, how far you're shipping these means and everything else. Where you can run cattle or some type of animal just about anywhere. And then questions, like some common questions about stools and blood tests and things of that, and in the very back. So it's a terrific book. Right around 50 minutes. I kind of warned you it might be a bit long, but if you still hear it, definitely recommend it. And what can I say? It's like, you read that book, you're gonna have a lot more knowledge in your noggin. You can keep it on your shelf. It'll look nice, but also you can keep coming back to it, because, you know, I went through it, and I got the general idea of a lot of things, some specifics, but there's some things in there that I'd like to look at once again or a few times and sort of dig into a bit more and branch off into. But the thing with learning some things, you kind of go in stages, you know. I was like, I had enough of that. I went through it. I probably won't touch it for a while, but it might be a book I pick up again. And then if I have somebody who's interested in diet or these types of things, I'm going to look to, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to give this book to a special person, and hopefully she enjoys it quite well and gets all that information from it. It also has some like basic how-tos and recipes scattered here and there, a few of them. So I hope you enjoy yourself a nice day or whatever it happens to be, and I'll catch you later. Thanks.